Now, as I promised, I will videotape the creative process of how we use an image which you chose as your source of inspiration. Amna Ali chose dunes, and she's done some beautiful sketches. And I will show you on her example how these images, how to work with them further. Now, one thing I didn't see in this particular process is working with an image directly using tracing paper, and that's something I need to show you how to do. Now, let's say you have an image and or number of images, and you're observing them and looking at the areas which can be very interesting for you. Also, please bear in mind that we are creating multiple pieces and not just one piece, which means that we have to find a relationship between earrings, pendant or necklace, bracelet, and a ring, right? Now, but in the meantime, we're exploring the source by using the image and tracing paper. First step is to use the image by applying tracing paper on top of it, and basically with graphite, whether it's mechanical or not, it doesn't matter, HB pencil, you just repeating, imitating the curves and the lines, and everything is starting with a line. Now, as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm not just like using one thickness, but also playing with the thickness. In some areas, I might do somewhat like that, which will create a thickness and therefore add an interest to my lines as I go, instead of just using one thickness. Because the purpose of it is that what it does is creating some kind of a three-dimensional feeling already, even though you are working on a flat background. So this thickness, the difference and the variety of the line is already giving you something, you see. So that would be your first steps to go. Same thing I'm going to do with other images, where I will seek for some interesting spot, let's say, in that particular image, and then take it further. Now, not only you just blindly repeating it as you work, but also you are adding some things, whether you're adding it right away, working with an image, or furthermore, once you will take this tracing paper and apply this to by flipping it like so, applying this, then tracing it back and working further. That is depends on your own approach, this variety of the process. Okay, so I'm going to do the same procedure with other images and then come back to you. For example, this particular image I like very much because it has this nice silhouette of the shadow of the woman or a man, and that curve like the dune. It's like, for me, when I look at this picture, I feel like that there is a man standing in front of his goal, going further. It's like that kind of vision. This is my goal and I want to go there. So that's why this particular image I like very much. I also like this image. Also, it has a story where you observing the dune and there's a silhouette walking away. I could imagine that you know, there will be some clear footsteps and things like that, which I can then further work with. All right, so I'm going to complete these two exercises and come back to you with the result. Okay, my dear ones, so here's what I did. Let me show you. I traced some curves and lines which I found attractive on different images, like this one, for example, here, this one, here, like this one, for example. And the one I was discussing is this one. And one more, I was attracted to the lines from the wind and trace these lines to understand how the texture of the sand on dunes working and if I can take it further or not. So for that reason you need your tracing paper where you made your sketches or outlines, and then flip it inside out, so that as you will be tracing these lines, then you can work with them by tracing it from your tracing paper on the white background. So at this point I suggest we use harder, if it's possible, harder pencil, because let's say H or 2H, so that as you will be tracing it, it will give you nice and clear line instead of using HB, because the lines can be quite vague. As you can see, it's transferring, and once you're done, then you will have to develop this further. Instead of leaving them as lines, they will then become shapes, and furthermore will be transformed into form, and that I will show you as well. So as you can see, also what I do is like I kind of connecting them at the same time, so they are changing as I go. Even as I'm working on these lines here, they will change their shape as they will be transformed into jewelry elements, because it's no longer an image, it's our pattern, which then you will apply to your jewelry piece. And that is the next little step. This is what I have so far. It's very vague, but it will appear then with the further working on it. Let me show you how. Once you will transfer, let's say this. Well, we also have here and here. This is for you to actually, once you have several options, you can combine them together. They don't have to be separate. You can combine them later. Let's say this can be combined with this, right? I mean, here you can mix and match according to your, as your process, your creative process goes. Yeah. So now, as I moved my tracing paper away, this is where then I will start to finalize these lines into shapes now, instead of being just a line, because now we have to also understand what is the relationship between negative spaces and positive spaces. And at the moment I'm working black and white using just graphite, but then later on and shading it like so, so that you understand also clearly how that negative space looking like. How beautiful is your positive spaces, for example? Are they interesting? Do they have variety of thickness? Do they still remain that feeling of a desert and dunes? So the feeling of your source of inspiration has to be there. It doesn't have to be copied as an image, because again, we're using it as a source of inspiration, rather than copying an image and then converting it into jewelry, which is in the first place is going to be challenging to do. So now I have this, and you can see how it actually already transformed from being this and becoming something else, right? But not too far though, so that it's not becoming like, oh, that's not recognizable anymore. The feeling has to be there, remain there. And this lonely figure here, I'm going to leave it as well. I'm not going to take it out, but maybe just give that little, I'm going to transform the silhouette into something more dynamic by putting this kind of like a dress, giving a shape of dunes in some way. And that is my own personal addition to this composition. So now we have this little story, beginning of the story. So as I work with this image, then can play with, okay, wait a minute, I can use this one. Can I? Yes, I can. So then say, okay, what if I'm going to implement this together? What do I have? And now you have these dunes. That silhouette is no longer a shadow, but a silhouette of a person looking into the far away forward to the heel on of the dune. Okay, so now once you have a concept, then you're ready to convert this into the jewelry set. I suggest you draw first a somehow silhouette of a woman who is going to wear it, right? And it can be quite abstract, just for you to have an idea how it's going to be. The concept itself, is it going to be, say, heavy necklace, or maybe it's a pendant, accompanied with earrings, maybe it's something dropping down, just like Amna did in this particular necklace, inspired by dunes, which I really like this concept, and I really like that she used stones, and it's beautiful. Somehow, for Amna, this is advice. If you can convert this in a kind of allegory of a footsteps as the person walking through the desert, that would be something, will add a meaning to your jewelry design. That's one thing. And the other thing is the three-dimensional concept, because right now this one looks flat. And our goal in this project to make it three-dimensional. Now, how do we make this three-dimensional? What you can do is, and that's for everybody advice, is that now imagine, and I'm going to draw just on top of it, now imagine that actually this area, instead of being flat, is going like a twist, let's say. So there you have it, you see. I'm going to change the pencil. So now, if I, for example, borrow the concept and the shape, but will make it in a way of a twist, like what I'm doing right now. Now, this time, my piece, the element, will become three-dimensional. And three-dimensional does not mean completely round. It means that from three different views, it will have different drawing, different shape. And therefore, this piece will have a name of being three-dimensional, you see. So now the shape I worked on, but then I'm going to borrow Amna's dune concept by using tracing paper. So once I did that, then the next step would be to apply the principle of the dunes to that shape. Well, actually, it's a form already, so. This particular printout, because I wanted to fill on one paper, is small, but if your actual piece is bigger, I really advise you work with the actual size. If it's 3 centimeters, 3 centimeters. If it's 4, it's 4. If it's 5, it's 5. The closest possible to your actual size that your design, sketch and design has to be. So Also, what you need to pay attention is the interesting space in between the positive shapes. If they are all the same thickness, the same distance, that will make your design boring. So now I have this, and you can see how twisted it is. Of course, with the rendering, you have to show it more, and even more with your paper prototype, which would be your next step to do. For some people, they prefer to create prototype first, observe it, take a picture of it, and then take it from the actual prototype. And if you struggle with the three-dimensional vision and drawing, then I suggest you to do that. But let us come back to the process I started with, talking about the model and how it will look like on the model. So you need to take into consideration, of course, the earrings, and you can do several options. How the earrings can be, maybe they are long, maybe they are very small, and then the same thing with the necklace, which we were going back to Omnes. But now, for example, my variation of what I'm doing here. Yeah, remember I was also telling you about the concept and principle of the footsteps. You can create your story based on your own imagination and the source of inspiration. And then let's say the hand. Again, I am doing everything very approximate. You don't need to know how to draw anatomy of the person. You just have to imagine the bracelet. How's it going to be? Is it like a cuff, let's say? Maybe it's, but we're talking about dunes. Maybe it's waving as a dune. The whole story can open there for the viewer who will be looking at this bracelet. And the ring as well, how the ring will be. The ring itself and the bracelet itself already three-dimensional. Even if you will create a tube, for example, let me just show you how to do that. You're doing the ellipse first, bringing it down and another ellipse, and connecting on both sides. So this way you have a concept of a bangle, which in a big scale is a bracelet and in a small scale is a ring. So, but that's just a shape. Now we have to work with that shape, and this is where your waves, you know, in my particular case, my waves of the dunes can help me. Whether you can trace them, or as you were drawing, your hand is already remembered. By default, your hand will remember how to do those movements. However, I suggest you keep your source of inspiration and your drawings always very, very close, so that your eye going from the drawing to the concept, drawing concept, okay? So now what I'm doing here, I was like, okay, this is going to be the concept of my bracelet, and I want to make it like a cuff. It's a rigid piece. But at the same time, I don't want to lose the meaning and the story behind it. Like, for example, here where this little silhouette is going away, I'm going to borrow this line and imagine that it's actually going like this, you see? Like so. Even can repeat that. So let me just do that. Which will again change, you see? But that's the point of the creative process. It never stays as it is. So now I have this guideline, and I can take it further, keeping my first drawing close to my drawing, and always keeping close. I can always refer to it. And there we have it. So I'm going to just imitate this edge of the dune, which is here, with the edge of in the middle of the bracelet. And this way you start to develop. And therefore, as I'm going, and at the same time I'm thinking to myself, okay, if this is going to be my bracelet, how is it going to be? Is it going to be similar? My ring and necklace and earrings, how is it going to be? And what do I have to do not to lose the concept of this traveler going somewhere? You see, so I need to put it something there. Now, instead of being a physical silhouette, maybe I'm going to put a pearl, and that's going to be my traveler going there. or it can be, well, instead of being a round, it can be some kind of a oval stone, which is reminding you of a silhouette, being a symbolic rather than physical, like a photo picture, but yet without losing the concept. And I put also very small stones here representing footprints. That's my perception. That's how I right now developing this into a jewelry piece. Now these dark lines which you see, they will turn into positive space, and the white ones, I see them and then they will turn into negative space, you see. Now I'm also going to do is I'm going to corrupt that perfect circle to make it more organic, so it's not it keeps that nature of the dunes and keeping it soft, so that the story is there, the principle is that, and it has this feeling of a desert and being a stranger, traveler, being in the middle of this desert on the way to achieve some goals, I don't know, but that is for you to then, you are the story creators. So, and that would be my sketch. That's a sketch process, you see, before you are moving into something, developing it further and more detailed. You can also do this, for example, on the hand, how it will look like. Again, I'm kind of like designing this concept, which is, we have the dunes, a person, a footprint, and so on. And same concept can be for the ring. Now, how I do that myself personally, I just can put my hand on top of the paper and trace my fingers, piece of paper, there I have it, and then basically wear the ring, again using the same principle. I'm working now in actual size, and that is going to be my ring, yeah. And then further, again, the same concept, but less details. Okay, so the ring, when you're developing the concept, same concept, but then for the ring, I'd suggest to use less details because it's a smaller object and cannot feed all the details. But the same principle, that same feeling, the dune, the edge of the dune, and the traveler, or maybe some stone. So this is the concept of developing your sketches, which then have to go further into detailed sketches of your jewelry set. Now that would be my first sketches of the bracelet and the ring. I also have to think about earrings, and therefore my first idea in my head, which I'm registering on the paper, because we are working with a tube, kind of, it also can be somewhat like a tube, but then vertical. And the principle and the silhouette shapes of the dunes I'm going to place embracing this tube. The actual size is not yet there, it's to be made, let's say, to be finalized. But at the moment, the concept of this lady who is wearing it, how it will sit on her. So we have this bracelet, the concept of a bracelet, ring, earrings, and the necklace. Now for the necklace, I would want to use this concept because it's matching with the image I was using here, and use the silhouette as a potentially hanging piece rather than being part of it. Let me just put it this way. And then the dune, which is in this area here. Again, keeping everything in your area of vision so that you don't go too far. Now, this particular task for me would be, I have to consider that this has to be three-dimensional, you see. So how do we turn this into be three-dimensional? By layering up. Layering up. So let's say if you created one layer of your with your pattern of the dunes, then you have to create a second layer which will be elevated and going on top of it. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't want to make it too busy either, but just keeping the concept. So this is what I came up with very quickly. So that is your concept of 5 pieces in one jewelry set.